Welcome back, and now for the news in detail. Islamabad says India's behavior with Pakistani diplomats in New Delhi is a clear violation of the Vienna Convention. In a statement, Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi said with such actions, India is trying to find excuses to carry out false flag operation in Pakistan. He said Indian allegations against the staff of Pakistani High Commission are baseless. The Foreign Minister said India asked for a 50% reduction in Pakistani staff at its High Commission in New Delhi. Qureshi said Pakistan responded in the same coin by asking India to reduce its staff in Pakistan by 50%. He endorsed China's position on the Ladakh region and said Beijing legitimately acted against India's attempt to annex the Chinese land. In Pakistan, the number of coronavirus cases has surpassed 180,000, with nearly 3,900 infections reported in the past 24 hours, while 60 more people have died overnight, raising the total number of fatalities to 3,755. The Health Ministry said the recovered patients tally has crossed over 77,700. The ministry said over 100,000 cases are active in the country. It said the province of Punjab reported the most new infections with 1,516 cases. (1,375) people have died from COVID-19 in Brazil overnight as the death toll tops 52,000. The number of global COVID-19 cases has crossed 9 million, while death count nears 477,000. More in this report.
As the world grapples with a resurgence of COVID-19 cases, Latin America continues to be the virus epicenter with over 100,000 deaths. As the US opens after lockdown, 7 states have reported the highest surge in the cases. Infectious Disease Director Anthony Fauci has warned the spike is due to the increase in community spread.
Right now, the next couple of weeks are going to be critical in our ability to address those surgings that we're seeing in Florida, in Texas, in Arizona, and in other states. They're not the only ones that are having a difficulty. Bottom line, Mr. Chairman, it's a mixed bag. Some good and some now we have a problem with.
Tokyo's Governor Yuriko Koch said the city will record a large number of the virus cases after a cluster of infections was discovered in his office. Over in Australia, medics have reported the first death from the virus in over a month, as the state of Victoria logged a double-digit rise in cases for 8th straight day.
We are as well prepared as any nation in the world. The case numbers are low by even Australia's historic standing. They are minimal by global standards, but they are of concern. They could spike further.
Meanwhile, German authorities in the state of North Rhine-Westphalia have reimposed lockdown restrictions in 2 districts after a spike in cases. In the UK, health leaders have cautioned authorities to prepare for the real risk of a second wave of the virus.
Kabul says 10 security forces have been killed in a Taliban attack in Afghanistan's western Badghis province, and Afghan lawmakers said 5 others were wounded in clashes in Balamurghab district of the province. He says 7 commandos and 3 soldiers were killed in the attack. He said the clashes continued for more than 2 hours. The Taliban have not yet commented over the development. Syria says it responded to Israeli strikes on southern, central and eastern parts of the country. In a statement, the Syrian army said 2 of its soldiers have been killed and 4 others wounded in strikes on an installation in the southern town of Salkhad. The military said Israel jets also hit an army outpost in Salamia and another in Sabura town in Hama province. The bases are in zones in eastern and southern Syria, which Israel had hit in recent months. State media said the missiles came through east and northeast of Palmyra city. The Israeli army declined to comment with the development. Thousands of Israeli protesters have demonstrated against Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's plan to annex the occupied West Bank. In Tel Aviv, the protesters called for a 2-state solution and opposed Netanyahu's seizure plans. The demonstrators said they are afraid of the annexation's consequences of starting a big war in the region. They criticized Netanyahu's policies and called for a democratic process. Meanwhile, over 1,000 parliamentarians from across Europe have signed a letter strongly opposing Israeli annexation plans. The letter raised serious concerns about the proposals and calls for commensurate consequences. The Arab League has called for a political solution for the Libyan crisis in accordance with the Berlin Conference and the Cairo Declaration. In a virtual meeting called by Egypt, the League's foreign ministers discussed the reservations of the Government of National Accord on the Cairo Declaration. In a statement, Arab League's Secretary General Ahmed Abul Ghait said Libya is passing through a dangerous turn in the course of its conflict. He said the military option will not achieve victory for any side and will not bring peace or establish stability on the Libyan soil. Responding, the GNA has criticized the Cairo-based League, accusing it of having double standards. The Foreign Ministry said the League sessions have been called without the required quorum. Meanwhile, Libyan army said it discovered 3 unidentified bodies in an area south of the capital, Tripoli. After a week of escalating tensions and leveling threats, North Korea has suspended plans for military action against South Korea. State media said the decision was taken at a military commission meeting chaired by Supreme Leader Kim Jong-un after taking the prevailing situation into consideration. Meanwhile, South Korea said it is closely reviewing Pyongyang's decision to suspend military action plans. Unification Ministry spokesperson Yo Sang-K reiterated Seoul's commitment towards keeping inter-Korean agreements.
The government's original stance that inter-Korean agreements must be kept remains unchanged. Apart from this is a reminder that activities which cause tensions between the two Koreas and pose risk to the safety of residents in the border area, such as releasing anti-North Korea leaflets, will continue to be sternly dealt with.
Iran says it will talk with the US if it apologizes for exiting a 2015 nuclear deal and compensates Tehran. In a televised speech, President Hassan Rouhani said Tehran has no problems with talks with the US on condition. Rouhani said Washington should return to the 2015 agreement and fulfill its obligations under the deal. He called on the European parties of the deal to resist US pressure on Tehran's nuclear work. Rouhani also warned the International Atomic Energy Agency not to make politically motivated decisions under the US and Israel's pressure. The Iranian president said agreement was not enough to contain Tehran's missile program and regional influence. In 2018, US President Donald Trump pulled out of the pact between Iran and 6 world powers and reimposed sanctions. Turkey says its soldier has been killed in southeastern Hakkari province after coming under fire from the Iranian side of the border. In a statement, the Defense Ministry said the soldier succumbed to his wounds after getting injured during a surveillance activity. It said 2 other soldiers have been wounded in the border town of Yukesokova by a harassment fire from Iranian direction. The ministry did not say who had shot at the soldiers. Turkey has been fighting with the Kurdistan Workers' Party along with its borders with Syria and Iraq for decades. But a casualty report from the Iranian border region is rare. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg has called for Berlin to play a more prominent role in security alliance. Stoltenberg's comments followed US President Donald Trump's decision to withdraw troops from Germany.
The NATO chief sat down for an interview at a time when cohesion between member states is under the radar. Stoltenberg said the world needs more German leadership, and NATO expects Germany to play an even more important role in shaping the course of the alliance. He said Germany now has the largest defense budget in the EU and third in NATO, behind the UK and the US. Stoltenberg said he urged Trump to maintain presence of US troops in Europe prior to the official announcement of troops withdrawal. He said the presence of troops is important for security for both the US and Europe, as peace and stability in Europe adds to the security of North America. Meanwhile, White House National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien said troops withdrawn from Germany may be redeployed to Indo-Pacific. He said troops will be redeployed to confront China, which is part of Trump's great power competition under his strategic vision for the future.
Peaceful demonstrations against police brutality and racism in the US continue for the 29th day since the custodial killing of George Floyd. Protesters in Washington, D.C., Oakland, and Seattle marched through the streets to demand widespread police reform and racial justice.
As the Black Lives Matter protests continue, in Washington, protesters called for Emancipation statue to be taken down, depicting former President Abraham Lincoln and an African American. Elsewhere in Oakland, California, young protesters marched to demand the removal of police from schools ahead of the district school board vote on the issue. Meanwhile, Seattle police reported the third shooting in the so-called Capitol Hill organized protest zone, a day after the city vowed to take back the area. Over in Kentucky, the Louisville Metro Police Department fired Brett Hankinson, one of the police officers involved in the fatal shooting of Breonna Taylor. At Atlanta's Ebenezer Baptist Church, friends and family members paid tribute to Rayshard Brooks, who was shot dead by police on 12th of June. In a fiery speech, civil rights leader Martin Luther King Jr.'s daughter Bernice King urged demonstrators to keep marching until Black lives actually begin to matter.
Don't you stop until Black Lives Matter in every state, in every city, in every hamlet, in every village, in every sector of American society, and ultimately the world. And I close that in honor of Ahmaud Arbery, in honor of Breonna Taylor, in honor of George Floyd, in honor of Rayshard Brooks and countless others. Don't stop until it matters that dignity, justice, and equity are a reality for all Black lives. Rayshard Brooks' death will not be in vain, because justice will roll down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream.
Earlier, Twitter placed another warning notice on President Donald Trump's post, threatening serious force against the protesters in the U.S. Capitol.
So time for a short break. We'll be back with more stories. Stay tuned. Welcome back. A U.S. Navy ship has navigated near the Venezuelan coast a day after an Iranian cargo ship docked at a port of the South American country. The Southern Command said the USS Nietzsche sailed outside Venezuela's territorial waters some 12 nautical miles from its coasts. The command said it held freedom of navigation operation within an area the Venezuelan government falsely claims to have control over. This comes after Washington said it was deploying assets to the Caribbean amid economic sanctions and alleged narcotics shipment. Last month, Tehran sent fuel shipments to the oil-starved OPEC nation as Washington threatened stern measures but took no military action. A powerful earthquake of 7.4 magnitude has struck southern Mexico's Pacific coast, killing at least 6 people. The earthquake swayed buildings in Mexico City and sent thousands fleeing into the streets. Government agencies said La Crescenta was the epicenter of the earthquake. About 200 houses in the area have been damaged, including 30 badly impacted. The state governor of Oaxaca, Alejandro Murat, said the hospitals are dealing with the situation adequately.
The damages to the hospitals in the Central Valley and the IMSS Public Hospital in Huatulco are not structural damages, and they can continue working. As of 300 in the afternoon, we can confirm that communications and basic services like electricity and water are all 95% re-established, and what's left will be attended to by tonight.
Russia has marked 75th anniversary of the World War II Victory Day with a military parade in Moscow that was meant to be held on May the 9th. The annual parade was held in Red Square, which featured about 14,000 military personnel, 234 armored vehicles, and 75 aircraft performing traditional flypast. The parade included units from most of ex-Soviet republics, as well as from China, Mongolia, and Serbia. In his address from Red Square, Russia's President Vladimir Putin paid tribute to the soldiers who laid down their lives. Military parades were also being held in other cities, including hero cities, which saw heaviest fighting in Soviet Great Patriotic War against the Nazis. The annual parade commemorates the victory parade staged by the USSR back in 1945. Germany's top court has ruled Facebook should suspend combining users' data from WhatsApp and Instagram without explicit consent. In a fast-tracked proceeding, Federal Court of Justice backed country's antitrust agency amid a larger court battle. Chief Judge Peter Meyer-Beck said Facebook is using its dominant position to force users into giving up their data without giving any choice. While Facebook said main proceedings before a court of appeals are ongoing and it will continue to defend its position that there is no antitrust abuse. It said the verdict is only about the preliminary proceedings and there will be no immediate changes for its users in Germany. In 2019, Germany's Federal Cartel Office pulled brakes on Facebook's data collection and threatened billions in fines if the company failed to comply. US e-commerce giant Amazon says it is launching a $2 billion climate pledge fund to support the development of sustainable technologies. This dedicated venture investment program will back visionary companies to facilitate their transition to a zero-carbon economy. In a statement, CEO Jeff Bezos said companies of all the sizes and stages from around the world will be considered. He said each prospective investment will be judged on its potential to accelerate the path to zero carbon. Amazon also pledged to meet the goals of the Paris Climate Agreement by 2040. As part of the climate pledge, the company agreed to buy 100,000 electric delivery vans from the vehicle manufacturer Rivian. In Switzerland, an acrobatic show stunned the audience as daredevils gave record performances in Les Debriales. The Swiss Glacier 3000 organized the show to support the artists impacted by the pandemic all over the world. More about the amazing art in this report.
Circus performances have been cancelled around the world due to the coronavirus pandemic, but one acrobat has kept the dream alive with a death-defying Wheel of Death stunt in the Swiss Alps. Acrobat Freddie Knock, one of the organizers, broke 3 records during his performance. He maintained balance for 40 meters on a slope, rode a bike on a cable car for 367 meters, and walked blindfolded on the same cable for 151.1 meters. Knock says he wants to try performing on a hot air balloon at an altitude of 5,000 meters.
I show stuff nobody did before. And for sure, new ideas is in the head now, and you can go further and further. And my next project is like I go on the hot air balloon. I want to try 5,000 meters underneath. I have something underneath while I do the blindfold and the bike, and without balancing pole cross 20 meters.
Other acrobats like Swiss trapeze artist David Maillard hanged at the cable car 200 meters above the ground. Ramon Catheriner performed on the Wheel of Death with the Swiss Alps in the background. Knock believes in the time of crisis, it is the artists who can bring life back to the people.
Singers, artists, theater, for me it's all the artists and performer. When you think about like in the old time when the war was, the artists bring life back in to the people.
Knox says by these tough performances, he wanted to highlight the struggles amid the pandemic.
The US says it will cut off its economy from Beijing if American firms are not allowed to compete on a fair and level basis in China. Speaking virtually at an event, Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin said Washington expects Beijing to abide by the terms of the Phase 1 trade agreement. Mnuchin said a level playing field with Chinese companies presents a great opportunity for the growing middle class in both the countries. He also called for a massive increase in Chinese purchases of US goods, energy and services. European stock markets are trading lower as investors' confidence dampens following a surge in COVID-19 cases. Nearly all sectors are losing steam, with autos stocks leading the losses. London's FTSE 100 has lost nearly 2.5%. Frankfurt's DAX is down nearly 2%. CAC 40 in Paris is trading over 2% lower. In Asia, Seoul's Kospi gained nearly 1.5% as the shares of Samsung Electronics surged nearly 3%. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index plunged over 0.5%, while Shanghai Composite gained a fraction. Meanwhile, international benchmark Brent crude oil price has lost over 1%. And that's all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.News.